would do a continuation of explaining the conservative worldview. Um, Last time we talked about abortions and capitalism and socialism and a few other subjects. Today I want to hit a couple other hot topics because there's just not a lot of non-hot topics to hit. So those are the ones I feel that need the most clarification. So before I jump right into the Second Amendment, I want to express this idea that it doesn't matter what amendment it is. It doesn't matter what in the Bill of Rights that we have, what's in the Constitution. Conservatives are typically going to adamantly defend that. It doesn't matter if it's illegal search and seizure. It doesn't matter if it's your ability to incriminate your ability to plead the fifth to not incriminate yourself. It doesn't matter if it's reverting things back to the states, like in the Tenth Amendment. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's in the Constitution, if it's in the Bill of Rights, they are going to fervently defend that to the best of their ability. Anything that threatens to take that away or compromise the integrity of it, they're typically going to speak out against, and they typically get a lot of backlash for that because people have misunderstandings. We're going to clear up a couple of those on this one. So the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is the one that most people talk about, um, aside from the fact that there's this online assault on freedom of speech on college campuses. There's an assault on freedom of speech. It's just very much tilted towards the liberal side to silence conservatives, and there are loads of information on that. If you don't know anything about it, you can go to PragerU. You can look at any of the news uh, on any conservative speakers. There was that whole incident at UC Berkeley when Milo Yiannopoulos went there, and I'm not a huge fan of him. I don't think he's as conservative, more of a provocateur, I would say. Sometimes he has some good points. Sometimes I can agree with him, but he is very outlandish. But either way, silencing speech, no good. But the big one that everybody touches on is um, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. And the big thing about that is it says that the government shall not infringe on this right. That's the big thing. And what I think people get mixed up on uh, is directly related to the mass shootings that you see that people associate. Um, if you got rid of the guns, those things wouldn't happen. So the first point most conservatives would make is you blame the person, not the gun. The gun's not going to get up on its own and go shoot people. It's not going to get up and just cause all of this mass violence. It takes human action for that to happen. And if you have the freedom of guns, you're going to have people that use that responsibly, and you're going to have people that don't use that responsibility. The flip side to that is if you got rid of the Second Amendment, you're still going to have people that don't use it properly, and it's going to skyrocket in the black market any price that people are going to have to get guns. You're not going to ever eliminate the guns. You're only going to punish people that follow the laws. And that's the whole big sticking point. And the whole purpose of that amendment is that it was given to the people in the event that the government became too tyrannical and they could defend themselves. That was the whole thing. And when you look at the history of governmental regimes that have came in and became authoritarian or totalitarian, one of the first things they do is go after the guns. And the biggest example you could point to right off the bat would be Hitler. One of his first things he did when he got control was got rid of the guns from the people. Um, if you can disarm the people, the government can take control. That's cause and effect. We don't want to see that. Those who don't pay attention to history are doomed to repeat it. That's why you see this big fight. The second thing is the NRA is a non-governmental organization. They contribute to campaigns. They contribute to the parties that are going to help defend the rights that are in the Constitution. And that's about it. They can lobby, and that's legal, but the lobbyists don't determine policy. The lobbyists only can try to convince people, the politicians, for particular policy measures. But at the end of the day, the politician's going to vote however they want to vote. Um, so there's a whole debate on whether lobbyists really speak for the interest of the constituency or not, but that's different from district to district. NRA speaks on a national level, So they go for the federal level on most cases, and when there's an incident on the state level, they will go out for the state level. I know that for a fact. There was a lot of activity with that when it came to the Stone Marjorie Douglas incident, and you saw David Hogg and that Gomez girl uh, just railing against Rubio and Dana Lash. And they pretty much just let them say what they were going to say, and then are telling you the same things I'm telling you now. This is just common sense. You blame the person and you hold them accountable. That's why Nicholas Cruz is in jail. That's why he's going to trial. There was a heinous incident today or yesterday in New Zealand about a similar type of thing. When it comes to mass shootings, and I remember when I was in class, we had this huge class discussion related to the guns rights, and it was right after the February 14th shooting last year at Stone Marjorie Douglas. The professor, he didn't discourage the argument, but he made a point that once I've seen how it plays out, when you look at it, it's pretty true that the American public has a pretty short memory when it comes to incidents like this. There was a lot of talk for about a month or two, and then it kind of died down. And it's always when the next one, when the next one, when the next one. How many people do you hear talking about the Pulse nightclub shooting? Not that many. Not that long ago, you had that shooting at the synagogue. How many people are you hearing talking about that? It kind of died out real fast. It just tends to be the case. I don't know why, but every time an incident like that happens, the first thing, excuse me, the first thing you see are politicians calling for gun control or a gun confiscation plan like they had in Australia. It didn't work successfully in Australia. There are tons of reports to do that and to compare. If you're going to do a comparative research on Australia and America, you're going to run into a lot of problems because they don't have the same kind of constitutional rights that we do here. The statistics are going to be a lot different. And that's another thing when it comes to the Second Amendment, is when you look at the statistics and you hear them talk about how many people die from gun violence, part of that statistic includes suicides. So you have to consider the fact of, if I take out self-inflicted injury from gun instances, is that really gun violence if it is a self-inflicted thing? Or should that just be tied into the suicide rate? Because you can commit suicide in many different forms. Not saying that that's a good thing, it's just part of it. But if I tag in that large number of suicides, well, then I'm going to skyrocket the percentage on gun violence. There are studies after studies after studies on this stuff. Again, it boils down to, you don't blame the gun. The gun is an inanimate object. It can't do anything without human action. You blame the person that is behind the trigger. But you don't take it away from law-abiding citizens. That's just stupid. It doesn't make sense. It's a constitutional right for a reason, and that is the big position for conservatives on that. You don't come after the guns because it is in the Constitution. Another big argument on that front, one of the last ones I'm really wanting to touch on with that, is a lot of people want to argue, well, they didn't have the kind of guns, they didn't foresee the kind of guns that we have today when they drafted the Bill of Rights. Well, do you really believe that there wasn't gun innovation going on at that period of time, that they didn't think about, yeah, guns are going to get more powerful and better and better over time? I'm pretty sure that they did. I'm pretty sure they had that idea. And there are things that you can't get. You can't get fully automatic weapons like Tommy guns anymore. You can't get fully automatic machine guns, and if you can, they have to be from a certain date. You can't get like a newer model of it. They can't manufacture those anymore, and you have to have a super special permit that you have to go through a lot of background checks for, like really extensive background checks for. It's not for everybody to go through all that just to get one of those weapons that have to be dated like before the 1950s, I think it is. It could be, I'm not 100% solid on that date, but I'm pretty sure it's somewhere around that time. So you're not going to find like a 1999 model fully automatic machine gun. that somebody's going to be owning. I mean, that it just doesn't happen. So that whole argument is crazy, and the whole term fully semi-automatic doesn't exist. And this is important because semi-automatic is pretty much every gun that there is out there. That would include pistols and everything, and that's the whole trickery of why language is important in politics. Because if you can fall for that and you don't understand what they're talking about, well, they can say, well, we're going after the AR-15s first, and you know, you give ground on that, and let's say they take the AR-15s, and then you think about the Virginia Tech mass shooting, the school shooting they had there. That guy used pistols. A lot of these shootings, when you look at it, they use handguns. So then they figure out that those are semi-automatic. So then they're going to go for semi-automatic weapons. But then what are you left with? You're left with like single-shot rifles and shotguns, and then it's only a matter of time before they come for that. When you give them so much ground, that's what happens. If you don't believe me, look at how they treated the whole situation over in England, where they're trying to enforce a knife ban. Like there's a certain kind of knife that you can't have. It's very limited, and it's still not working. Bans don't typically work. We should have learned that lesson during Prohibition, because what happened when we had Prohibition? The alcohol just went underground, had an underground market. Uh, it didn't stay to code. Some people went blind over drinking it. Some people didn't. And, you know, it went on for years. You had a huge criminal enterprise, so you had an increase in crime. And the same thing happens whenever you're talking about that kind of thing. The next thing is another hot button issue. So I want to kind of combine these two so there's a full understanding. So we got the border issue and the immigration issue. And those two are getting way mixed up with each other. So I'm going to take both of those on at the same time. In 2006, the Congress actually passed a law to build a physical structure at the southern border. Like it passed in Congress, and then the funds were not allocated for it. So the question really is, if there's already a law, why hasn't it been done? You know, why are we funding science experiments that deal with uh, how rats are affected by steroids instead of taking care of funding with that? It just There's tons of stuff like that. There's a lot of fat you could cut. Why are there any kind of agencies that are deemed non-essential in the government? That's another thing. Most conservatives would say you should probably just cut those agencies out completely, because that's just overgrowth of government, and you can question whether that's overreach or not. When we have government shutdowns, those are always the first jobs that get shut down first, is the non-essential ones. That's why when they try to make you panic about the social security checks and the military not getting paid, that comes after a very decent length of time. Um, we had a recent government shutdown uh, for almost a full month. And I have to, you know, if you're going to freak out about it, you got to ask yourself, did your life really change at all in that period of time that the government shut down? Did you struggle? I mean, maybe if you went on a flight or something, you had problems with the TSA, you know, either being not there at all, or, you know, slow down flight times. But that's probably about all that you would have experienced there. Um, the other thing about those that get laid off, they can take loans from the bank, and the banks will give them their loans, because that money is basically federally guaranteed. They're going to get their back pay. They did get their back pay, so the banks are going to know that they're going to, you know, get that money. So there's no reason they're not going to give a loan on guaranteed payback. It just, you know, people just need to use a little bit of thinking up here. It's not that big of a deal. Government shutdown's not that big of a deal. When the government is not open, uh, typically you can do better, but you have to do it on your own, and that's the whole thing. So yeah, you could cut the fat there. But back to what I was saying with the borders and immigration. So, like I said, there was a 2006 law, and they did not allocate funds to it. So there was no structure there. And a lot of the people that are coming on the TV now, like Nancy Pelosi, like Chuck Schumer, like a lot of the newscasters that you see on MSNBC. You got Chuck Todd, you got Joe Scarborough, you got Jake Tapper, a bunch of them, and then a bunch of politicians like Kamala Harris, and you know I already mentioned a couple other ones. talking about how the wall is immoral and it doesn't work. And let's not forget uh, the wonderful and popular Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's really big about talking about the evils of the border issue. And now there's this whole situation going on where Trump just vetoed the vote that went against his national emergency declaration. So first of all, we've already established that there should have been some kind of structure built there by law. And it doesn't matter what political side of the aisle you're on, both sides had to be there to help pass that law. Um, Most of the people that are talking about it now voted for that law. So you can ask them why they didn't think it was immoral or unethical or inhumane back in 2006, and what changed their mind today or within the last 2 years. I have a hunch, but I'll leave you to decipher that for yourself. So the second, is there a crisis at the southern border, and why is it always the southern border we're talking about instead of the other borders? Well, we don't really have this kind of an issue with most of the other borders. That doesn't mean we don't have some. There are, there are people that are getting here through other means on the East Coast, on the West Coast. I'm sure there's some getting through on the Canadian and North American border, but it's not so much. Why do you think that is? Well, Mexico is not an economic powerhouse for one. Um, they're closer to a developing country than an actually established one. Uh, the living conditions there are not good. So what happens when they cross the border? Is it just illegal crossings? Well, let's take that one first. The fact that it's illegal crossing is the big thing. It's not the crossing part that's important, it's the illegal part. So if I break a law, there are consequences to breaking that law. It doesn't matter if I'm in this country. It doesn't matter if I come from another country into this country. If you break the law, there's punishment to that. So, if I went out and tried to rob a grocery store right now and I got arrested, I would have to go to trial for that. I would have some kind of sentencing because I broke the law. It was illegal to try to take that money with strong arm robbery that didn't belong to me. I would serve consequences for that. Um, so that's just basics. Basics. I mean, you learn that in elementary school. You don't break the law. There are rules. Uh, so the illegal crossing is the problem. Crossing the border is not the problem. You come through a port of entry, you go through all the right channels, you do all the right paperwork, you can get in line just like a lot of other people that are working to get their green cards, working to get their citizenship. It's possible to do. Um, it's much harder on you to go over illegally and then try to make it work for you. If you get caught, what are they going to do? They're going to send you back. Unless you wind up going to one of these sanctuary cities, and I'm pretty against those because, you know, whether you like it or not, there are criminals that cross that border just like there are decent people. I'm sure there's a mix of them, but all of them are committing a crime when they cross that border. All of them, all of them, all of them, 100% of them are breaking the law when they cross over that border without going through the proper channels and ports of entry. Period. That's the whole thing. The wall argument is you will slow that down. You will slow it down because everywhere there is a structure that has been built in El Paso and Southern California and places like that, it goes dramatically down because there's this structure. It gives Border Patrol more time to get to those people as they're trying to do it. It makes it more difficult. And what does it make it more difficult? Just for people that are trying to get from one country to the other? No, it also makes it harder for people to smuggle a lot of drugs over here, and we know that. We got a fentanyl problem coming over from there right now, and it's not been the first kind of drug crises we've had there. You got the drug cartels down there. They've been fighting them for years. And you know that they're using these porous border entries for, passage between the border lines. It's not like they haven't figured out where the weak spots are at this point. Second, you disincentivize people from making the trek that's pretty treacherous to begin with. They spend a lot of money on it. They get extorted in the process. A lot of women get raped. There's also human trafficking that's going on down there, and these are all crimes and heinous too. We don't want to see people get raped. We don't want to see children get hurt, and then we're going to get to that in a second. Um, you don't want to see people get exploited, extorted, and that stuff will go down. You will. The whole point of the border wall argument is to funnel the traffic to the ports of entry so that people can come in here in a legal way. I'm not anti-immigration. I'm anti-illegal immigration. If you come illegally, I have no problem with that. If you're going to be a productive member of the society, good, go for you. Go America. Come on over. Let's do this. It's not a problem. And I don't think any conservative really has a problem if you do it legally. I don't care what country you're from, as long as you're vetted, you get all the paperwork done, you do what you're supposed to. Come on in, no problem. That's not too much to ask to do it legally. So it is a matter of security. It's not just a matter of our national security, because if you have too much of an influx of these people, it becomes harder and harder to get a census of who's here. It's harder to distribute the medical facilities to what they need, because we got population growth that is unaccounted for. There's just economic ramifications for this. But there's a reason most places aren't open border countries. The whole Brexit ordeal, one of the biggest things that caused that to begin with was that they had an issue with not being able to dictate who could come in and who could not come in because they were part of the European Union. It was a big issue. It changed the demographics of some of the places there. It caused a lot of problems, and people got very frustrated and resentful, and they voted against that for that reason. So, that's a more comparative thing. They're closer to our government than Australia is. It's still really different with the parliament, the prime minister, and everything. But that policy is very similar to the issue that we're having here. What was going on there to what's going on here. All right, so we want to slow down crime. We want to protect our border, and the reason we want to protect our border is because it helps us uh, maintain the ability to enforce our laws, which is an aspect of national sovereignty, and every nation should value that part of their nation. What is the argument you're hearing now that we don't need IDs to vote? We want people to come. They're even arguing for people that are coming in illegally to be able to vote. And if you don't believe me, again, just pay attention to the news. You can find this stuff everywhere. This is not like new stuff. And that's not the way we should conduct the way the laws are worked in this country. We have lawmakers for a reason. If we're just going to break the rules for everybody because we want to say that we're being more humane and humanist about everything, and then not say that there's a national crisis going on down there, but you have to answer, if there's not a national crisis going on down there, you're comfortable with women getting raped repeatedly, and kids getting trafficked, and women getting trafficked, and drugs getting stuck. You're okay with that? Like that's humanitarian? Really? It seems like you'd go the opposite direction to help people from both sides of the border on that particular argument. So uh, it's not necessarily a partisan issue. It's very much a legality issue. I have no resentment for people that are trying to find their way to a better life here. By all means, there are legal ways you can do that. Come on in if you can do that. Not a problem. But don't risk your life. Don't risk your kids' lives. I think that that's just dangerous. Um, you know, it, it just opens the door for other bad things to happen. To think that refugees from other countries that might will wish harm on this nation won't come through those same means, that's another problem that you're going to run into as well. Um, you got to be able to vet people. They got to be able to follow the laws. If you can't follow the law to get in, how am I supposed to expect you're going to follow the laws when you're here? That doesn't mean that all of them are criminals, but some of them are. And if they're breaking that law, they did commit a crime. So by definition, that would make them criminals. But uh, we're trying to separate. Some of them are good and all, and they just broke that one particular law. it's a reasonable train of thought. If you can't follow the first law to just get in, how am I supposed to believe that you're going to follow all of the laws? What other laws are you willing to skirt over to make your life better here? That's a legitimate question. Um, so, just to be clear, not against immigration. There's legal immigration. If you can do that, no problems with you. You're going to be a productive citizen here, no problems with you. You're going to break the laws to come in here, problem with you. Like that's an issue. It just is, and that is the most porous border. That is the problem, the most problematic area we have right now. That is why it is always the center of discussion. Um, it's just common sense again that we should be able to do that. When you look at the numbers, when you look at how everything goes, that is the best thing to do for that. You're going to have issues with eminent domain and things like that. I understand that. Um, there's going to be some problem areas for it, but it was already passed into law 2006. Look it up. Look it up. You can go onto the Congress.gov and you can find it. It's like the Secure Fence Act of 2006. Just look it up. You'll read it. It'll say that there's supposed to be a physical barrier there. It says it right in the law, and they never did it. They never did it. So, food for thought on that. Um, what's another big issue? Uh, you know what? We talked about socialism, capitalism, pretty much being like, this is why socialism doesn't work. Well, let's explain why capitalism does work. Capitalism is a voluntary basis. And I explained this a little bit on the last video where, I pretty much explained like if I wrote a book or something or I produced a good, like an iPhone or something, my incentive is to produce this product for you to give me money. Your incentive is to get that product and pay the money for it. That's the exchange. It's a voluntary exchange. That's the whole thing. It's not coercion. It's not centralized government trying to say I'm making the decisions to determine what everybody needs. That every household should get, you know, two 12 packs of toilet paper, and that should get them through a month. You know, some families that might work, some it doesn't. That's the whole issue. Capitalism says that I can start a business producing something with a profit motive, but I have to produce something that people are willing to buy, because if they don't buy it, what happens to my business? Well, it goes under. I fail. I took a risk and it didn't pay off. On the other hand, if I'm heading to Amazon, like Bezos did there, trying to start an online bookstore, which nobody believed in at first, believe it or not. They didn't think it was going to come off the ground when he started doing that. It started off as an online bookstore, and now look at it. That dude is worth more money than almost anybody. He made a risk. It paid off big. It paid off big. Why did it pay off big? Because he made a platform that produced goods that were easily accessible to the largest amount of people who were willing to pay for those items to get shipped to their house in 2 days or more, depending on, if you're a Prime member and all this, that. And, that's another thing. They use mechanisms to help increase their revenue by doing memberships. And now they're doing, streaming videos that they diversified as they grew. And they produced products that people wanted. And you know that because people are paying money for them. Nobody forced them to pay that money. Nobody sat there with a gun to their head and said, you got to give me your money for this Amazon product. They looked on there, they said, ooh, I want that, put it in their shopping cart, and gave in their credit card information. Bam. They did that on their own. Amazon got the profit, you got the product, everybody's happy. This is how capitalism works in the most basic sense. You can take it from a small mom and pop's form to a national form, and it works that way every time because it's voluntary exchange. What slows that down are regulations that get in the way, price controls that get in the way, and all of this stuff comes from government. They're the ones that sit there and are like, nope, you gotta have all of these environmentally friendly, uh, you know, non-emissions kind of equipment to help lower your carbon footprint. They're gonna have to pay for that. How they're gonna pay for that? Well, they're either gonna lay people off or they're going to raise the prices, typically they're going to raise the prices. Sometimes they'll do both, depending on the situation. So, you can't blame the business owners for thinking about the livelihood of themselves and their business, since they were the ones that took the risk to establish it. You can take a risk to establish something. You want to start a bookstore? Start a bookstore. You want to start a supermarket chain? Start a supermarket chain. They got, Whole Foods just got bought out by Amazon not too long ago. And that guy started off in Houston with one store. One store. You got Trader Joe's, you got Aldi. You know, these are relatively newer ones. They've been around for a little while, but I mean, Publix has been around a lot longer. Walmart's been around a lot longer. What happened? Kmart. What happened to Kmart? You don't see those anymore. They're pretty much done. And then you had the old Toys R Us. They had a big product back in the 50s, did pretty good up until recently, and then they failed. You can fail at any time. That is part of the risk. So if you're willing to take the risk, you should be able to get the best benefit, the best reward out of that. And the guy that starts the business is always the last to get paid. Why are they the last to get paid? Because they got to pay taxes, they got to do inventory, they got to pay employees, they got to pay insurance, they got to pay all of that. And then at the very, very, very end of it, they get whatever's left over of the profit. And that's it. So, why would you want to go to socialism where the government is basically able to say, you have too much, and you have to give some to this person, and this person didn't do anything to take the risk to get that money, but you got to give it to them anyways. Well, like when you get down that road, you have to ask, who gets to decide how much is too much? Capitalism says you can make as much as you want as long as you're going to put the risk and work into it. If you don't take the risk, you can't get that reward. If you do, you have a likelihood to fail. But if you succeed, you can succeed big. And if you do succeed big, you can create jobs. If you create jobs now, other people are succeeding. Now they're making paychecks. Now they're able to help their families. If you get bigger and bigger, those people can get promoted and you can have new jobs that get filled in. If you expand, you can have new entry level jobs, and it goes on and on and on. Businesses are the job creators, not the government. Government creates policies that allow businesses to create jobs. It is not the government's job to create jobs. Job creation is not in their role. The reality of government and their role is this: they are there to do all of the things that you cannot do yourself as an individual. That includes national security. That includes building the military. That includes foreign diplomacy, foreign policy, things like that. Stuff that you're not going to be able to go out and do on your own. If you can do it for yourself, the government shouldn't be involved. That's pretty much the basic conservative standpoint. Fiscal responsibility. That's a big one. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm pretty irritated with the Republican Party about that whole thing, because they cry about it and cry about it and cry about it. I think I'm definitely more on the Freedom Caucus side for this, where you got your Jim Jones and your Rand Paul, because they're the ones that are sitting there talking about, hey, we got this $22 trillion debt hanging over our heads. We're going to have to tackle that at some point. We can't just keep spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. We're going to have to cut something somewhere. Again, I go back to, why are there non-essential positions, non-essential agencies in the government? Cut those out, throw that money to the debt. That's my personal thought. That's what makes sense to me. I know it makes sense to a lot of other people. Just saying. But we got this $22 trillion debt. And if you've ever been in debt, you know that somebody's going to be calling to collect at some point in time. So we're going to have to make good on that at some point. We're going to have to start making progress, because the interest is killer. Do you have even any idea how much $22 trillion is? There's only like 60 something trillion dollars in the globe. Like if you put it down to dollars, there's only like 60 something trillion dollars that fluctuate through markets globally. Like that's all the money in the world basically. And we're almost half of that. We're almost in debt half the money in the world. Like, how does that not blow your mind? And we're not talking about that. We're just spending, spending, spending. We're the richest country in the nation. It's like, you can't live on credit forever. You got to get some fiscal responsibility going on in there. Last thing I'm going to talk about, because this is recent and it annoys me. What happened in New Zealand is a terrible tragedy. Like, it happened in a mosque. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Anybody who comes in and commits a mass shooting like that, and especially tries to broadcast it live on Facebook, like that's a sick person that does something like that. But that happened in New Zealand. Some people are trying to tie this to the Muslim ban that Trump had early in his uh, term. So I want to be real clear on this. It's not a racist thing. It's a stigma thing, and there's good reason for it. I remember on my freshman year of college, I wrote this paper on Islamophobia, and I took the two words, Islam and phobia. Islam is religion, phobia is irrational fear of something. There are no people that have an irrational fear of Islam. There are people that have a rational fear of people who practice Islam. And that doesn't mean that they're going to immediately say everybody's terrorist. I know that everybody was up in arms for a long time after 9/11, but let's think about this. The Pulse Club shooter was claiming allegiance to ISIS, which is the Islamic State of in Syria. You had the Boston bombers, again, is Islamic. They claim this. This is news. Like, this is not being like they're this is just the way it is. It's the facts. You had 9/11. It didn't take that many to kill a whole lot of people. You had that. You had that. There was this one story where they tried to attribute it to workplace violence, where this Islamic man came close to beheading one of his coworkers. I think he might have. I'm not sure. It's been a while since that story came around. That's an older one. But yeah, workplace violence, that's not workplace violence. That's radicalism. You had stories about people getting stabbed on trains in New York City or attacked with hammers. This is all within like the last, pretty much within the last 5 years. And all of that is attributed to Islamic. Now, you could say that that number's low, but when you look at it on a global level, you had Brussels, that whole incident, that wasn't that long ago. You had the issues with the riots over in England. You had riots in France. You had that shooting in France. Um, it's just time and time again. Even this recent one, the one in New Zealand, again, there's a reason for people to have a hesitation for that. It's not an irrational fear, and it's not against the religion. It's against those radical people that will tell you directly that they're out to kill infidels. Who are infidels? Anybody that ain't them. Like, that's it. So, let's keep that into perspective. That there is a reason for that. You had people with the shoes, and now that's why TSA checks your shoes. That guy came in trying to use a shoe bomb. And, they've tried multiple times. Like, and a lot of those have been stopped more than we've heard about ones that succeeded, and that's a good thing. But the fact that they're continuously trying is an issue. Um, I don't wish anybody to get shot up in a manner like that, to get harmed in a way like that. It's terrible. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care if you're in the Jewish synagogue. I don't think that should have happened. If you're in the mosque, I don't think that should have happened. If you're in a Bible study group in South Carolina, I don't think that should happen. I don't care who the perpetrator is, whether the Islamic, whether the black, whether the white, whether the Mexican. I don't care if the purple, blue, green, peach. It doesn't matter. Those people are bad people. Again, you blame the person. You don't blame the gun. Those people committed crimes. They killed people. They deserve punishment in a way. I was listening to a newscaster today on the radio, and I tend to agree with this statement that he made that there is no place in hell hot enough for people that do something like that. It's just terrible. There's no getting around that, and I wish my thoughts and prayers are with the family. And I know a lot of people are saying, thoughts and prayers do nothing, do nothing. But I'm a religious person. I believe in God, and I believe God can do anything. Maybe not be your cup of tea, but When I say thoughts and prayers, I mean my thoughts and prayers go out to God for those families so that He can do what He does better, because He's way better at being God than I am. So I hope this clears up some stuff. Um, if I can think of any more issues, I will definitely try to make more videos like this. I really appreciate you guys watch me. I know there's not many of you right now, but um, feel free to share these videos if you feel like they're important enough and explanatory enough that people could understand what I'm trying to do here, and could actually use this information. Uh, I think I'm going to try to talk about uh, uh, more current issues as time goes on and try to give you my 2 cents on it. Um, I'm not looking to monetize these videos or anything. I'm doing this because I feel it's important, and if it gets shared, it gets shared, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Um, there's no money in this for me. I'm out to clarify where I stand, where other people that are like-minded like me stand, and why. And that way, when I do start talking about issues, current events, and stuff, you can kind of understand right out the gate where I'm coming from when I talk about it. And if I change my mind, I'll definitely let you know why I do that too. Um, I think that's about it for this one. And thanks for taking time to sit here and listen to me. I appreciate it.